Are you a project manager or project leader that needs to onboard staff? If you are, you want to do that efficiently, effectively, and in a way that creates a high-performing team. How can you do that? Well, I've got a process that I call my onboarding guide I want to take you through today. It's actually available on my blog, and you can download it and modify it for your team. So let's get stuck into the 5 things I always do when bringing on a new member of the team to a project, and how I use this guide to help me do that. Well, hi, I'm Liz, the Project Skills Mentor, and my job is to make you more successful at your job. Onboarding step number 1, share the project mission. Your team member may actually know what this project's about. It's likely they did understand that when you were interviewing them, but you might want to share some more. And let me show you this part of the guide that takes you through that. Sharing the mission is objectives, but also sharing what the project or service can be. So an example of that would be, you may be trying to improve customer services, but your process for doing that might be through an app. Also, you might want to talk about what success looks like. And that's not the app, and it's not improving the service. It's the outcome. Next, bring it all home with a clear goal statement. This is generally tied to one of the KPIs in your project charter, and it can be distilled into just a few words and possibly a metric. And lastly, in this section, I also talk about the sponsor. So above and beyond all the other goals, who your sponsor is, what they focus on, and what's most important to them. So add that. Now you can give this information in this form, or you can create little video snippets, maybe a message from the sponsor or a message from a key user. And these little 30-second snippets can be told in the form of storytelling. Now, if you want to know more about storytelling, let me share this video here because it's really important to tell a story in a meaningful way, where you grab your audience and really reel them in with the information you want to share, but in a way that they will remember. These short videos can be really helpful in doing that. Step number 2 for onboarding. Share your team's process and team structure. Now, the team structure may be obvious and the role may be obvious, but it's good to share the overall structure. Who are the key people in your team? Is your staff organized by the kinds of work they do? So functional people work together, technical people work together, and so on. Or do you focus on the outcomes or the goal of the work? So a UX design is managed by functional plus technical plus users. And maybe the technical area also includes a user because you need to do data mapping or something else that requires user experience knowledge. So however your team is organized, you need to share that with the new employee. And you need to help them understand your processes. What processes are you following? Are you Agile? If so, what kind? And are you waterfall? Or maybe a hybrid, or maybe something else. The point is you share it. You share the process, you share where documents are stored, how they're used, how that team member will use them, and who reviews them. And maybe that's one of the things the team member needs to do. So sharing all of that baseline information is really important to just understanding the way of working on the project. And the last point about way of working is understanding team meetings. Now, what you're trying to describe here isn't just the meeting time and place, but also who goes and what the purpose of the meeting is. Part of what you're trying to describe is the culture of these team meetings also, not just what's happening at the meeting and who attends and where they are, but also what's to be expected from that team member. Whether this is a meeting where they get information or give information or share information in a workshop format, all of that is super helpful for making sure that the culture of the project team is respected. That way you don't end up having a project team meeting where the project manager basically updates the team being interrupted by asking a lot of questions or input from a new team member who doesn't realize that's not the normal thing that's happening during that meeting. And the third onboarding step is something that may be forgotten about or even not considered important, and that is showing the individual contributor, the team member, how they contribute to the overall project. Now, it may be obvious to you what that is, but why not give a sheet like this to the new team member? And you'll see I've got a picture there. In some cultures and some projects and companies, it's nice to put a photograph up of the new team member. You can even post all of these on the team room walls so that The team knows what each of them are doing, and this can be helpful to creating a deeper understanding of workload rather than just a RACI. But what do we mean by what's your role? Well, first of all, it's literally what is your role and what are the key attributes of your role, and you'll see that here in the blue box. But next we talk about key activities the person's involved in, and again, this might come from the RACI, it might be more detailed than that. I like to give people KPIs. Now these could be the project KPIs for which their work is directly related, so they can keep their eye on the prize, or it could be a KPI for their work. Let's say I was onboarding the new communications manager. For that, I'd want to say I expect to have regular communications with the team every week and regular communications created for the stakeholders or public audience every month. Something like that. So you would want to have KPIs either for the team and let them know these are team KPIs for which you're contributing, or these are your roles KPIs, which you just need to manage. Two other things that are kind of important for this process is to go through the individual tools. Now, in the way of working, we talked about going through the kinds of tools you use as a team. But if, for instance, you're hiring a project management office person, they're going to need some specific tools related to maybe budgeting or some other kind of reporting and scheduling that the other team members won't use. That can be also the case for other roles, such as functional roles or technical roles. So knowing about those specific tools you'll be using and making sure that they have access to those tools, the logins and the passwords for those tools, is another important point about onboarding. So two other things I like to give on this one paper, which is who do you report to? Who is your lead? The other one is something I'll talk about in a moment, which is who is your buddy? And that brings me on to number 4 of the onboarding steps, which is give your new folks a buddy. This is especially true when your project is midstream. So in other words, your project's been running for a while. Your initial team has already gone through storming, norming, and conforming. You've got a good high-performing team, but as you bring people on, subject matter experts or replacement roles or something like that, you're going to want to keep that team high-performing by keeping all the members on the same page. And more than just the competence for the work and the understanding of the culture, it's the core values. The core values of camaraderie are trust, integrity, respect, value for differences. These will make a huge impact on your project when something goes wrong, there's a misunderstanding, something bad happens on the project. In any of those situations, making sure your new hires are as connected as the existing initial team, that is oh so important. So taking time to give a buddy to that person is really important. So let me talk first about the buddy for just a minute. Buddies aren't necessarily needed for small projects, that's true. But if you have a project of, say, more than 10 or 15 people, you probably need this system. So let's start by talking about who the buddy is. The buddy is someone who's been on the project for a while, gets along with people, is able to have empathy for others, understanding what it's like to be the new hire on the block, and can help that person kind of get their feet on the ground, not just from a process perspective, but also from a cultural perspective. You'll see in this document how I show that buddies can help run through a checklist to make sure the person understands not only the tools they need, but actually has them installed, understands where they sit, handle some of those housekeeping issues. Also that the buddy take them to lunch so they meet the team will be useful in getting those initial connections made. But the buddy should be someone who's allocated time in order to do this job. Maybe the buddy has a few people allocated to them who they check in from time to time. They help them in the initial part of the first few days, and then they go back every week or two and just make sure, are there any new questions? How are you doing? Did you meet everybody you needed to meet? This can be a really great way of making sure that every person on the project feels connected to the project as soon as possible. You not only want people to feel connected to the project, you want them to feel empowered to the project. And that is my 5th onboarding step with this page. One of the things you want to focus on is actually giving people a chance to shine. Now, a new person, depending on the role, depending on their responsibility level and how long they've been already doing project work, this may take, a few months to get to or a few weeks to get to. But if you're a project manager like me that likes to give team moments during staff meetings where a team member can mention a new process, a breakthrough, a new way of working, a new element, something like that to the project, then give a new person a chance to do that little bit of a presentation. Letting people shine, both the people who've been there forever and the new ones, can give people a sense of ownership of the project they wouldn't otherwise have. These 5 steps are really key, and using this model has been really helpful to keeping me efficient and effective when onboarding. But one of the things you might also ask yourself is, when exactly do I onboard? Well, clearly, one of the times you onboard is when you have a project start, when you're kicking off. But you might also look at moments in time during the project, when you have people start new during the project, when you have to bring on a subject matter expert for a period of time. Or perhaps, if you have a long project, maybe a 3 to 7 year project, which I've had several of, you do that every year, because every year you improve the way of working. You might be dealing with new stakeholders, new countries, or new end customers, and you might be dealing with a new scope of work. All of those are good reasons to reset your mission, reset your way of working, and make sure you encourage a new culture development in your team. Think of it as culture 2.0 of your team. And now, some of you might ask, well, I'm hiring in people from the outside. They're not members of the company that we're working for where the project is happening, and they're not members of the main team coming in from maybe a consulting agency or something else. So what do I do about these really new people, new employees to the organization as well? And I have addressed that in my blog. I'll leave the details to that below so you can have a look, but there is a difference and you do need to take that on board. I hope you found this information helpful. 5 ways to onboard somebody to keep your team high performing. And if you want to know more about a high performing team, check out this video. If you found value in this video, I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone else. Let's get the word out there so everyone can feel confident and competent at being a project manager who onboards people well. And I hope to see you next time on projectskillsmentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.